Alright, what's going on guys? And welcome to the first Penny Dreadful deck tech featured on this channel. As usual, we will be playing 5 Magic Online games, but first, let's take a look at the deck and then we'll take it into battle with our first ever Penny Dreadful League. So, it's Season 10, a whole new season, and as the new cards were being revealed, one card stuck out to me, and that's Tempered Steel. Tempered Steel is a card that actually sees play in Modern, at least at the Friday Night Magic level. It's a 3-mana enchantment that gives all artifact creatures you control +2/+2, and yeah, it's not a tier 1 level card, but it's definitely played, casually, and it's pretty powerful. So I knew immediately that I just had to build a deck around this card. Though I must say, I'm not the only one to feel this way, because Tempered Steel decks have been fairly popular so far in Season 10. So not only is Tempered Steel legal, but Chief of the Foundry is as well. So we'll be playing 4 copies of each. Chief of the Foundry only gives artifacts +1/+1, but it's still pretty decent when combined with Tempered Steel, so it's pretty nice. Next is the Aggro Package. We'll be playing 4 each of Court Homunculus, Bonded Construct, and Toolcraft Exemplar. The Homunculus and Construct aren't that exciting, but they are basically the Mem Knights of our Penny Dreadful Affinity deck. They're just cheap, aggressive creatures, and in this case they both have 2 power for 1 mana, which is pretty good. The Exemplar was an all-star and standard during the heyday of Mardu vehicles, and it works just as well here in Penny Dreadful. While it doesn't get pumped up by the Tempered Steel, it kind of has a built-in Tempered Steel effect just because it pumps itself when we have artifacts, becoming a 3/2 if we have an artifact and getting first strike if we have 3 or more. A 3/2 with first strike for 1 mana is pretty nice. Next up, we're going to go wide with 4 copies of Servo Expedition and 3 copies of Cogworker's Puzzle Knot. Servo Expedition puts 2 1/1s into play, and the Puzzle Knot puts 1 into play when it enters the battlefield, and another when we sacrifice it. The important thing about these is that they both put 2 tokens into play with a single card, so they work really well with Tempered Steel. A couple of 1/1 tokens might not seem like much until they suddenly become 3/3s, and Servo Expedition is particularly powerful because it can be played on the curve, like it curves out really nicely. A turn 1 Homunculus followed by a turn 2 Servo Expedition, and then a turn 3 Tempered Steel. Suddenly you're attacking for 10 on turn 3. It won't happen regularly, but it's a pretty nice way to curve out. If going wide isn't your style, then we can also take to the skies with 4 copies each of Glinthawk Idol and Spined Thopter. The idol costs 2 mana and becomes a 2/2 flyer, a 2/2 artifact flyer, whenever we cast an artifact. So basically, it's a 2 mana 2/2 with flying. Plus, you can animate it by paying 1 white mana, which means right at the point when we've emptied our hand and we can't animate it by casting artifacts, we can just use our excess mana to animate it manually. So making this a creature is it's never going to be a problem. The Thopter, on the other hand, is just a 2 mana 2/1 with flying, and we're always going to pay 2 life for the Phyrexian mana symbol. We don't even have blue sources in the deck. It's just a 2 mana 2 power with flying, and that's all we care about. 2 life, that's negligible. The fact that these can very easily be 4 power flyers for 2 makes them incredibly powerful and a great way to close out games. Next up, we have a couple beaters in the form of Traxos and Fleetwheel Cruiser. Both of these just offer a ton of power with a low mana cost, so they're perfect to have at the top end of the mana curve if the game goes long. Traxos is a 4 mana 7/7 with trample that doesn't untap unless we play a historic spell, which in our case means an artifact. It's a little clunky, which is why we're only playing 1, but it's a great way to just brute force a victory if the board starts clogging up. Fleetwheel Cruiser, on the other hand, wow, this card is unbelievably good as a finisher. It's a 4 mana 5/4 with trample and haste is the critical part here. It does need to be crewed, it is a vehicle, but it crews itself when it enters the battlefield. So the cruiser, when combined with a Tempered Steel or 2, will absolutely devastate opponents. When this thing comes into play as a 7/6 or even a 9/8 with trample and haste, it can just hit the opponent like a freight train. I'm only playing 2 because I don't want them clogging up my hand in the early game, but man, as a finisher, this thing is a powerhouse. The final 2 cards in the deck are 1 copy of Razor Golem and 1 copy of Sculpting Steel. And yeah, I'm playing the Masterpiece because it was like 3 cents. Gotta love how cheap masterpieces are on Magic Online. Anyway, Razor Golem is a 3/4 with Vigilance, and it costs 1 less mana to cast for each planes we have. So ideally, it's a 3 mana 3/4 with Vigilance. It's not perfect, which is why we're only playing 1. It just, it can be really aggressive, and the Vigilance is super useful sometimes. Sculpting Steel, on the other hand, just enters the battlefield as a copy of an artifact that we already have in play. No, definitely it's a little clunky, but that's why we only have a single copy. It's one of those things that we can draw and, kind of amplify what we're already doing, and that kind of versatility can definitely come in handy. Anyway, that's it. Moving on to the mana base, we'll be playing 2 Foundry of the Consuls and 1 Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. The Foundry taps for colorless, and we can sacrifice it to put a couple Thopter tokens into play. 5 mana is a lot for 2 Thopters, but it's just a nice little bonus. And remember, those tokens have flying, so if we have a single Tempered Steel, it actually puts 6 power on the battlefield with flying. The Tomb, on the other hand, just lets us gain some life for each colorless creature we control. Again, doesn't hurt, it's just a nice little bonus if we need some extra life. We'll also be playing a single copy of Secluded Steppe in addition to 16 basic planes. And taking a super quick look at the sideboard, we'll be playing Sunlance, Scrabbling Claws, and Sundering Growth. Sunlance is just an efficient creature removal spell, Scrabbling Claws lets us keep graveyard decks in check, and Sundering Growth blows up an artifact or enchantment, and the populate mechanic is relevant since we do put out a lot of Servo and Thopter tokens. We'll also be playing Metallurgent and Eerie Interlude. Metallurgent is our solution to decks running lots of spot removal. It makes it really hard to cast removal spells when we can just regenerate anything at any time, so super useful. And Eerie Interlude lets us dodge board sweepers by exiling all of our stuff and then returning it to play at the end of turn. Speaking of board sweepers, we're going to be playing Scour Glass and Consulate Crackdown as a couple of our own. The Scour Glass blows up all non-artifact, non-land permanents, so this should be pretty one-sided, and the Crackdown is for mirror matches. It removes all of our opponent's artifacts, but not our own. So that's pretty nice. I've been testing this deck, and I've been seeing a lot of other people running Tempered Steel decks. It's a very popular thing, I think a lot of people just saw, you see Tempered Steel in the list and you're like, alright, well, we gotta try that. So it's been a popular deck archetype this season. So yeah, we'll do Consulate Crackdown. So one-sided board sweeper should be nice. Lastly, we'll play 1 copy of Cataclysmic Gearhulk, and yes, once again, I do have the Masterpiece because I'm just so fancy. Anyway, it's another one-sided board sweeper because we're most likely going to be able to keep more permanents than our opponent. It's also nice to have against any decks looking to go infinite with tokens. I don't know if any are right now, but also, you just never know with this format, so just in case someone's going infinite, let's just have something. Anyway, that's it. That's the deck. The first Penny Dreadful deck on the channel. I guess it's appropriate that we play an artifact on a channel named Affinity for MTG, so why not? And just look at the price of this thing. And I bet this is actually one of the more expensive decks in the format right now, just because Tempered Steel is so popular. I mean, when you're getting into like 5 to 10 cents per card, that's pretty crazy for Penny Dreadful. So this is probably the most ballin', blingy Penny Dreadful deck ever. Yeah, there you go. Welcome to the most expensive Penny Dreadful deck you'll probably ever see. Right, well, anyway, as always, we'll be playing 5 games with this deck on Magic Online, and if you want to see those games, check the description, there should be a playlist, and I will see you in the first match.